Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Weld Drake, an advisory board member of the Wolfsonian FIU and a longtime friend of both its founder, Mickey Wolfson, and of tonight's speaker, Leonard Lauder. It's therefore my pleasure to introduce this evening's talk. Back in November, Mickey sent Leonard a note congratulating him on his new memoir, The Company I Keep, My Life in Beauty, referring, of course, to his legendary stewardship of the Estee Lauder Company, which his mother founded. There's an echo here. During his 60-year tenure, he led the Estee Lauder companies on an expansion that has made the company a global powerhouse with more than 25 brands in over 150 countries. In this book, Leonard candidly shares stories of his remarkable career. It wasn't always easy. With ambition and success came mistakes and challenges. But here also is the story of a warm, loving family, expansive philanthropy, and a profound love of art. The Leonard Lauder I know is a neighbor and a caring friend, a great conversationalist with a wry sense of humor. Tonight, Stephanie Sayfie Aagaard, a native of Miami, well known for her weekly column in the Miami Herald, her monthly Step Says book club with books, and her innovative work with the Bell Harbour shops will be leading the conversation with Leonard. I now give you over to Stephanie, and let's all enjoy our evening with Leonard. Stephanie?
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's actually a real honor tonight. I loved the book. This was incredible. I couldn't put it down. The Company I Keep, I mean, really, every single page, I kept turning. My husband actually told me to shut the light off and go to bed because I didn't want to put it down. It was incredible. And the one thing that I think really resonated with me was it was all about family, business, but it was the enthusiasm, which the way it was written. So I am honored to be interviewing you today, Mr. Lauder. And I guess I wanted to start by asking you, what made you write this book now? Why the memoir at this time?
Stephanie, I'm a child of the Depression, and I was born in 1933. I don't know anyone that's as old as I am. And my mother, Mrs. Estee Lauder, used to say, she said, I got started when they were selling apples on the street, but I prevailed. And here we are at the end of in the middle of a pandemic, or maybe at the end of it, hopefully. And I said, this is my moment to take all the things we've learned and done and focus on, because we got started in the Depression. And with that, you take grit and ambition and power and energy. And that's what I wanted to pass on to everyone.
And you know what? You really did. Through this book, you feel that. You know, what do you hope the readers get from this? I'm sure there's so many lessons. What's one thing that you'd want them to take away?
I can do it. That's all.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah.
And you know, you spoke of your mother, and there were so many lessons that she really gave to you and your brother during this book. What's one that really resonates with you? One lasting lesson, would you say?
Well, many. Okay. She said, if you want to get something done, get a woman to do it. And her phrase was, if you want to get something done, there's telephone, telegraph, and tell a woman. And that's been our mantra all along. And so I'd never make a decision without a woman in the room or a woman at the table. And women have a different view. And I love women. And I want to just say this. If you're a woman, whatever it is, you'll get it done. I promise you'll get it done.
I wholeheartedly agree. I do. I believe it. And that was one thing I loved. You wrote a section about having a woman at the table.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because you said, you know what, we've got to mirror the market. If we're selling to women, and
Of
I read
course,
that,
yeah.
and I really loved that. I thought that was amazing. And it was something that resonated throughout the entire book. You know, you were working with women, and you had some really high-powered women that were working under you and with you for a long time.
Listen, even though they were working under me, I listened to them. It didn't matter whether they were above me or under me. I listened to them. And I always learned to recognize them, say thank you, say please, well done. Whenever I have a Zoom meeting, at the end of the Zoom meeting, I keep everyone's name and what they said. And the next, either that afternoon or evening or the following morning, I send them all a thank you. I want to, you can't get anything done unless you recognize the people who are with you and tell them you did well.
I marveled at that. I guess your blue notes was what you were, one of the things we were really famous for, was writing a handwritten thank you note, because it really went a long way, like you said. And one of the other, I'd like to call Lauderisms, was we can always do more, and the best way to do it is through listening. And exactly like you said, which is important because you learn so much through listening. I guess, you know, we're in Miami. I'm in Miami. You're in Palm Beach, but you know, the Wolfsonian's here. Why did your mother love Miami so much? She started flying down here, and you came on a couple of those trips when you were a young boy as well.
Well, look, she got started in 1937, 38. Even though the company officially started in 48, she got started earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may have heard of the bank robber Willie Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
Someone interviewed him and said, "Now, why do you rob banks?" He said, "Because that's where the money is." So she came down to Miami because the people who were her customers and potential customers were all in Miami. And so she brought me down here because my father was working up in New York. So she came down with me, and I grew up here really. And I went to a boarding school here.
Oh,
Yeah, in Normandy Isle.
okay.
Which you know where that is, a little bit
Yeah,
north.
of course.
And it was a Normandy school, and I was there, and I loved it. I loved it. We would go to the beach. There were no hotels there.
Isn't that crazy?
No beaches. However, when we went swimming, we often came out with tar on us because the U-boats were offshore torpedoing those tankers. But it was a fascinating time, and the Air Force had seized all the hotels except one.
Wow.
And so that they were marching in the streets, and it was an exciting time for a little kid to be here.
I'm sure you're probably, and now seeing Miami how it is with all the hotels and everybody coming from, I mean, really such different times, but exciting to see that change. I guess, what was one of your favorite personal memories from Miami? Do you have one that just sticks out?
Well, I can't say it's exciting, but there's one that I always laugh about. By the way, I was a very independent kid, and my mother let me be independent. So I went with my cousin Bobby, who is here also. We went to Flamingo Park. Does the Flamingo Park still exist?
Yes, it does.
Flamingo Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home wearing a wife beater t-shirt, undershirt that I had found in the trash can. My mother said, I felt like a man. I said, "Where'd you get that?" "I found it in the garbage." She said, "Take that off." And she threw me into the bathtub.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. It's funny what you remember, you know, those times, you know, the good times, which is amazing. Well, you know, you really do, like your mother said, we have so many ladies here in Miami who want to look great, want to feel great, and be confident. And you talk about confidence as being one of the most important factors of all. You know, what made you confident growing up?
Firstly, you have to trust yourself. trust your intuition. Now, here's one of the things I've learned. Your heart knows what your brain can sometimes barely comprehend. Listen to your heart, not your head. And that's what I did. And I must say that as people have asked me, what do you regret? No one has any regrets, but tell me about your regrets. My only regrets was that if I had an intuition to do something and I let myself be talked out of it, I regretted that. Don't let yourself be talked out of something that your heart wants you to do. If your heart wants you to get married, get married.
I love it. You're following your heart. You're following
right.
your heart because your heart does lead you to the truth place. And I remember you wrote in the book too, don't let anybody talk you out of a great idea, even your mother. So sometimes you did disagree with your mother. What happened there? Because that must have been tough.
Look, I was having a big discussion with her because I wanted to launch a competitor to Estee Lauder called Clinique. Because I always felt that it takes a thief to catch a thief. I knew what I had to do to compete with Estee Lauder. And so she wanted to call it Estee Lauder's Clinique. I said, but you can't call it Estee Lauder's Clinique. And she said, I'm Estee Lauder. I said, I'm Leonard Lauder. She said, okay. Okay. And I forever thank her for that.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. Now, those are great stories. And you write, you have so many, and anybody who hasn't read the book, I tell you, get it, go get the book. There's so many unique stories like that because we all remember Clinique. We all remember, prescriptions and origins coming out. And I think something that I really remembered, and you wrote about it in the book, was when you decided to take Mac over, and that was so forward thinking. I mean, with RuPaul and you have wonderful pictures in the book too of all those times, and that must've been difficult too, because that was really a change from the way you were doing things.
Well, it was a change, but look, I was a nice kid from the west side of New York City. What did I know about pink hair or green hair, orange hair, and jewelry in your nose and your tongue, etc. But they did, and they didn't care, and I went along, and I enjoyed the ride.
But you made it a great ride. You made it a great ride for them and all the other companies to go. And I also read that it was a big deal because you were also bringing Bobbi Brown on at the same a little bit after. But I think Frank from Mac wasn't so keen about that.
Well, you may remember that. But listen, I launched a Clinique to compete with Estee Lauder. I brought Bobbi Brown to compete with Mac, because I felt that I'd rather compete with myself than let someone else compete with me. Make sense? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's all those antidote and stories in the book that keep you going. I mean, you don't have a break. You go from one to the other, and it's really spellbinding. You really get into it, which I enjoyed. The other thing that I really loved, and I mentioned it to you, was your heart again followed you to philanthropy, to giving back.
Right.
Starting from just the playgrounds to Alzheimer's to really making a big stand in breast cancer. I'd love to hear what lessons you've learned from philanthropy and what really drove you there.
Well, I'll tell you something. There were so many people raising money for causes that I've never heard of. And they would give a beautiful ball, and everyone would all get dressed up for nothing. Okay, so I came to my parents. I said, look, you're taking all this money and spending it on other people's things. Let's do something that we do that no one else would do and will inspire others. Well, okay, that's how I started to launch playgrounds in New York City. And the first one cost us about $50,000 or $60,000.
Wow.
And then later on, we had more, we built 3 of them. And believe it or not, new playgrounds bloomed all over New York City and all over Brooklyn, just because they thought they knew they could start something themselves and get it done. And so it was farewell all these crazy charities, which no one else ever heard of.
And that happens. It's true. And I love what you wrote was instead of doing that, spreading it all around, let's focus. And you did do that. You focused on the playgrounds. And then of course, that led you to, at your next version was really breast cancer. And you started really with Dr. Larry North. Evelyn was Nort, and he was very excited to start the BCRF with you. But really, the last luncheon I went, you were down in Palm Beach, and you got up on stage, Mr. Lauder, and you had such a magnetic, really draw. You got up there and everybody was quiet, and your enthusiasm just made everybody want to listen to what you said. And the story you told, and when you were talking to the scientists, it really drew everybody in. Why, you know, I know a lot of people know, but really, why was that so important to start BCRF?
Well, my late wife, Evelyn, died of breast cancer. I'm sorry, she died of ovarian cancer, which is the predecessor to, she had breast cancer, which is the predecessor to ovarian cancer. And I made it my mission that I was going to cure breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And that's what I'm going to do. And what keeps me going and keeps me alive, as I have two missions. Number one, breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And number two, Alzheimer's. That's it.
And you've done it. You've done it. And you've made a big dent in both of those, which is incredible. And like I said down here, we just did a BCRF dinner for Bal Harbour Shops, which is so successful because you've been doing an amazing job in Palm Beach and New York and everywhere else. But we were happy to be able to host that as well and follow.
Well, thank you, Victor. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And you know, when we think about all that, there's such a legacy with what you've done in philanthropy, but also really a legacy with what you've done in your business. And that's one thing that resonated throughout the entire book. You know, you always had these amazing lessons. What do you hope is your long-lasting legacy for the Estee Lauder companies?
My long-lasting hope and wish is that the company sustains itself going into the future. Everyone is involved. A lot of the families are involved, and they're also interested in charities and philanthropy. We earn money not to buy fancy things. We earn money to do great things and to change the nation and change the world and make it a safe and better place. That's what I do, and I love it.
And you can feel that. You know, I feel that you just saying that right now. It's a passion of yours, and it's amazing that, you know, you keep doing that and you haven't stopped. You keep going.
I'm not giving up. I'm hanging in there.
You're not. And honestly, throughout the book, you can read all those. What I loved too was how you started off, well, obviously all the pictures too, but every section kind of teased you, whatever was the unexpected wrinkle, or if it was, I could afford to relax a little. You know, it was almost a teaser of what was to come. And so that's why I didn't want to put it down. So I was excited to hear it and really to go see the Wolfsonian and see that you've been a longtime benefactor there for so long. And really, I know, tell me.
I've been doing that for years. I met Mickey Wolfson maybe 30 or 40 years ago when the museum first opened. That was my thing. I loved it. I loved him. And it's still one of the greatest places to go if anyone ever wants to go there in Miami Beach. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was really lucky. I just went on another tour of the Wolfsonian, and we talked about the postcards you had donated and the posters. And it was really incredible because you could feel, you know, your energy there when they're having everything.
Thank you.
And really, how I know your offices were near a lot of the art museums in New York. What really made you first jump into the art world? You know, so many people are collectors and passionate. What was it for you?
Well, I started collecting postcards of the Art Deco hotels in Miami Beach. And then World War II started, and the government started to issue posters by war bonds. So I started to collect posters from World War II. Then I started to collect prints and posters from the French. Slowly but surely, I got into art, and art led me to a new world. Now, getting a World War II poster free is a lot less expensive than buying a Picasso. But I took it step by step by step, and I knew what I was doing, and I loved it. I still love it.
And while you read the book, when I was reading the book, I could feel your passion. And it felt like there were so many people that wanted you to be involved in their museum. And you were so generous to all, but you really put your heart into one specifically, the Whitney.
Right.
Why the Whitney? Why did you decide to go that way?
Well, there were two great museums in the city of New York. There was the Museum of Modern Art, and there was the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Okay, both of them had very rich trustees. I wasn't rich, but I wished I was, but I wasn't rich. I didn't want to be just another kid sitting at the table while
Right.
people writing $1 million checks. So the Whitney was my home, and I helped them, and we grew up together. It's like I had a twin brother, me and the Whitney.
I love that.
We both grew up.
I love it.
At the same time.
That's incredible. And you made such a difference with the Whitney, really, with everything that you donated there. And I watched your interview with the Whitney for your book too. And it was mesmerizing, the stories that were being told.
Yeah.
So your legacy is lasting there forever as well.
And I met some interesting artists. Now, if I was at the Met, the only thing I could meet was a mummy. So I had to meet some of the great artists, Jasper Johns and Bob Rauschenberg. These are the people who were doing the work then. And I went to their houses and I saw everything. And being part of that was exciting for me.
And you know, I love that. You mentioned Jasper Johns. There's a story in the book as well that you really wanted to purchase one of his pieces of work for the Whitney, but you said, I'm not going to do it myself. Let me get some other people so you can engage more people.
Yeah,
and that was an incredible story. I mean, you really thought that out and wanted to make a difference.
Yeah, look, I didn't want to do it all myself because I didn't want to have people say, "Oh, this guy Leonard Lauder is doing all the buying." Well, leave it to him. So every time I had something major to do, I went to others and said, "Let's all do it together." So the people who worked with me over those years, they're still there and building the museum, and I love them. Now we have a new museum downtown in New York City. If you want to go to New York City, the art is great, but see the views and look at the city and look at the New York Harbor. It's a great place.
It is. It's beautiful up there. And I know a lot of people have been coming to Miami, but I think they're coming to Miami for a little while, but they're going to head back up to New York as well, which is amazing. Well, tonight is very exciting because obviously we're doing this with the Wolfsonian, and we had the Director Circles members, who are many of them are on, and so many of them submitted questions tonight for you. So if it's okay with you, I picked a couple questions that they wrote. Okay, perfect. So the first question someone wrote was, what was your favorite marketing campaign for Estee Lauder?
Well, the favorite one was night repair,
Mm-hmm.
because it was a new concept. No one had ever done it. No one had ever used the word repair and things like that. So the opening ad was a picture of Karen Graham, our model at the time, asleep in a sleep, and from there it grew from there. Okay, and it's still today one of the major products we have, and it's a bestseller around the world because it's irreplaceable. No one can knock it off, and it is fabulous.
It is fabulous, and she was iconic too. I mean, I remember that whole campaign too. Everybody was, who is that? Who is that? And that's very interesting. So no one had ever used the word repair.
No. I should have trademarked it, but I didn't. Shame on me.
Well, they all know it's yours anyway. So that's, and what was the most, I mean, I guess that was your favorite. What's another memorable campaign? Because you'd had so many.
Well, I'll tell you something. We had a great fragrance business. But you know, in Japan, no one wore fragrance in Japan, and I couldn't sell fragrance in Japan. But I had a beautiful ad for a fragrance called Private Collection. And I wanted to sell the brand, not the product. So I ran a fragrance ad with the beautiful with Karen Graham, etc. And that was selling the Estee Lauder brand. And the two of them together, I like selling a brand rather than an individual product. So
That's very smart though, because then people resonate that. They're like, okay, that's the brand. Everything with that brand, I'm going to buy because they feel comfortable with the brand. I love that. I also read about your trip that it was very interesting when you said you were the first ones really to go to international. And when you went international, you had to learn their customs. You did a campaign once where they were going to have chrysanthemums. Correct?
Oh God, you remember that? Yeah. That's what you send people when they die.
Right, exactly. But it's fantastic that you did the research and found that out.
Yeah. And look, we were about to launch a product called Country Mist in Germany. And I got a call from our office in Germany. Hello there, you can't do this, Lauder. Why? Mr. Lauder, it's like saying country manure.
That's what I read. The word mist in German meant manure.
It has other words too.
We won't say those, but I can guess what they were.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because that must have been a feat, really learning all the different cultures, when you were taking these products internationally.
Right. You have to learn to translate. For example, we were all in China, and we arrived at our appointment an hour earlier than we had to be. So we went into Starbucks and got some coffee in China, and we had what they call the Starbucks conference. I said, now, guys, tell me the difference between the Mandarin language and the language in Hong Kong and the language in Taiwan. And they said all three languages are the same, but they're different. You can't use, everything has little twists to it. And so I learned. Look, for example, I launched a product called Wrinkle Stick, which is an anti-wrinkle stick. Okay? But it was translated in France into French as bâton de rides, stick of wrinkles. So if you want to have wrinkles, use that. So you learn along the way. And to me, the idea that you never stop learning ever in your life keeps us all going.
Absolutely. It is. And you're right. You can always learn. I think once you stop, you're like, you wrote about that too. You didn't want somebody who thought they knew everything. It was important to have somebody that was hungry, that wanted to keep learning, which I think is so important. And what do you think is something that the Estee Lauder's companies taught, all the consumers, all the women out there? What was the message?
Everyone can be beautiful, and everyone is beautiful. And I promise you, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, no matter how this and how that, you can be beautiful. And all you have to do is call me, I'll send someone to you, and you'll see how beautiful you can be.
I love that. And that really started with your mom too, right?
Well, I have to tell you something. You talk about the Bell Harbour shops. So they have Neiman Marcus there too. So she went to Neiman Marcus in years and years ago, I'm thinking about 1950. And she spoke to the buyer. He said, well, I don't know. And he turned to his assistant buyer, who was probably the ugliest woman I've ever seen in my life. He said, go meet this lady, Estee Lauder, see if you like the products. So my mother took her downstairs into the ladies' room, sat her down in the ladies' room, made up her face. Out came a movie star. And she came up, the buyer looked and said, okay, we'll do it.
Sold.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that because she Your mom was very hands-on. Everything I read, was here's cream. And that leads you also to not only hands-on, let me try, let me put the makeup on, but she also gifted everybody. And I think you really started that gift with purchase. That was something that was revolutionary.
It all started years ago because we didn't have the money to advertise, but we had the money to sample. And we gave big samples, a 2 or 3 month supply of each thing. And we gave them away a lot. I gave a lot of them away. As time went on, she came up with the idea, let's give a bigger something and tell them to buy something. And that's how it evolved. Now, the interesting thing is when we're doing that, all of our competitors said, they could go broke. They're going to be out of business. They'll never do it. They're all going to go broke. Every one of them is gone now, except we're the only ones left.
Isn't that incredible? That's incredible. Well, you knew you were doing the right thing.
Right,
and it's so true because after 2 months, they were in love with the product. Right. So it was really revolutionary.
But also remember this, listen, I was born in 1933. You can take the child out of the depression, but you can't take the depression out of the child. And so that we learn not to spend money on things that didn't mean anything. And I remember going on a trip to London, and there was a guy who used to work for us, and he was working for a competitor now, and he was sitting in first class, and I was sitting back in economy. I said to myself, he's in first class, I'm in economy. Let's see how long that company stays in business. They went broke the following year.
Wow. That's very, that's very interesting. I love those stories. But you knew. Yeah. That's incredible. I love that. Well, let me read one of the other questions. So they said, what is the greatest influence you have had on women?
The greatest influence I've had is that, yes, you can be beautiful and you are beautiful. Take advantage of yourself. Don't be ashamed of yourself because you are beautiful. And if you believe that you are, I promise you, you'll be more beautiful. You'll have a flush in your cheeks and you'll be able to do well. And look, one of the things that I was friendly with a man who's long since passed away, who was a classmate of my mother's in high school. And he said, Estee was always combing the hair of her friends. And she would take a lipstick and put a little bit of color on each. She was in high school at the time.
Amazing.
And those kids looked fabulous.
And you know what? That builds that confidence you were talking about.
Right.
You look good, you feel good, and you're confident. Well, you mentioned lipstick, and you've said that lipstick sells no matter what. So their question is, what makes it recession-proof? Why does everybody love lipstick?
It's not quite it's almost quite a recession-proof. But listen, this is something that I learned in Germany, which is having a very hard time. If you can't buy a dress, you can't buy a Dior dress, you can't buy a dress or a suit or a handbag, you can always buy a lipstick and feel better. So the lipsticks perk one up. And I always find myself, if I'm feeling low, I buy a new tie. But I'm not wearing it now. But my color gives you a lift.
It
always
really
gives, no matter how tough you are. Now, there's a story that many surgeons have, that if a woman has gone through surgery and she wakes up after surgery and she says, may I have a lipstick? That shows you that she's going to survive.
I love it.
And one other story I have to tell you. My late wife, Evelyn, and I were having the dinner at the home of a friend, and they were living in a townhouse, one of the floors there, and the wife said, "Oh, every time he cooks, he sets off the burglar alarm, the fire alarm." So he was cooking. All of a sudden, the fire alarm went off. Evelyn and her hostess, jumped up, and what did they do? They pulled out a lipstick to put on, because the fireman was so handsome and buff, they wanted to look good. If you want to look good for the firemen who are coming in to save you, everything's going to be good.
That's hilarious. I love that. I love that. But it's so true. It's so true. Lipstick's the first thing I think many women grab. You come out of a movie, it's dark, all the women are putting the lipstick on.
Right,
they're getting off the subway or the car, you see everybody putting the lipstick on. You're right. It instills that, it's the color, but also instills that confidence. You feel if your lips are bright, you're going to keep going.
See, look, you have the color, you have the cover of the book. Look at this here. Look.
I do.
Okay, look, guys, look. What's the color of the tie?
I love it.
Red.
I love it.
It makes me feel good.
It does. I love red. I love red. I love this picture too. It's a great picture. It's fantastic. Definitely get the book, guys. All right, we have some more questions. The question was, what inspired your mom to start experimenting and creating face creams and cosmetics in her kitchen?
Well, because as I mentioned to you, when she was in high school, she wanted to make the kids look better. I remember sitting in my high chair, and there was the stove, and she'd be mixing a cream in the stove and pouring it into a few jars. And that's it. She wanted to make everyone look beautiful. That was her mission. And the mission has been accomplished.
It definitely has. And she started really with her uncle. Your uncle was a chemist. Her uncle was a chemist, is that right?
He was an esthetician, and he made his own products, and so she bought them from him, and she was selling his, and along the way they both were doing it, but she started to make more of her own, and she did well, and I would watch her mix it, and by the way, not only did she make good creams, she's a great cook.
Well, that's important. That's the most important. The lipstick in your stomach is full. Those are two things.
I would come home from work, and she'd be in the kitchen wearing a hat. She always wore a hat.
Really?
All dressed up, wearing a hat and there she was cooking for me.
A good mom. A good mom. Right. And so, when you were speaking about that, when you came home, so and they really wanted you to be, a chemist or doing the research is what I read, but you wanted to go to UPenn and you wanted to study business. Was that tough? Because she seemed like a very strong woman. She, want things her way. That must have been a tough time.
That didn't come from her. That came from my father.
Oh, for your father.
So one Sunday morning, I walked into the bedroom, and they were reading the New York Times, and he said, "Look, what's this about? You wanted to go to a business school?" He hands me the classified section. In those days, there was a whole section called classified ads. He said, "Look up and see under B for businessman, help wanted." No one put an ad in for a businessman. Then look up under C for chemist. There were a lot of chemists. I wanted to be a chemist. I said, "No, I don't. I want to be a businessman." So
thank goodness
they let me do what I wanted to do. I was a very stubborn kid. I only wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I think it came out okay.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And it seemed like your mom was very driven like that too. She knew what she wanted and she did it. And
what she wanted. Yeah, she was like a steamroller.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that's incredible. All right, we have another question here. Over the course of your life as a collector, you collected hundreds of thousands of rare and vintage postcards. Many of those were produced by Wiener Werkstätte, displayed at the Wolfsonian in a traveling exhibition. This is a long question. Compared to other paintings in your possession, some collectors might trivialize postcards as far less valuable or important. What first attracted you to postcards, and why do you believe them to be a valuable cultural resource?
Okay, what first attracted me is the hotels in Art Deco hotels in Miami Beach. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for the postcards of those hotels, I don't think I would have been attracted to that. But it was fantasy. There was a hotel sitting on a beach. No hotel was near. There was a beach and a beautiful ocean outside. The beach was white, and the colors were fabulous. As time went on, and my parents sent me postcards, etc., got better and better. Now the Wiener Werkstätte, which I have in the Wolfsonian, those are all made by famous artists of the time. And it's like buying a limited edition print. That's what they were. And I collected them because I just loved them. And so you don't have to collect expensive things. They weren't so expensive, but I had fun, and having fun ain't so bad.
It's the way to keep going. That's the only way to keep going. It's fun. And you speak about, the art and the collecting, and I've read a lot about that, but you were very passionate about Cubism too. Was that, after you started collecting postcards, you really saw what drew you to that? Was there one piece that you really fell in love with?
Cubism, I love the construction of the way they balanced it. And if you look closely at a Cubist painting, you see the artist is trying to show us things from the everyday life that they had. And so, for example, in Paris, about 1922, 23, everyone was throwing confetti at each other. And the Cubist paintings had what looked like little dots, like pointillism. No, they had confetti in there. Or the Cubist painters would take the masthead of a newspaper, like, the Miami Herald has a masthead. They would put that in their paintings.
Love it.
So every night when I come home from work or come home from dinner, I would go into the living room and sit there for 10, 15 minutes and see the painting, and I'd find something new every time I went to see it.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And gosh, you must have so many stories about so many pieces of art, and so many stories about business, so many stories about your family. How did you decide what you put in the book? And also, were you writing all along, or I don't know, thinking about these stories that you were going to write this memoir at some point? I mean, because
I was dictating all along. Okay, and then I found a wonderful writer who got me. I had two writers before, they didn't understand me. This writer got me. She got me. And she would dictate to her, she'd write it down, and then I get the chapter that night or the following day, and she would say, maybe we shouldn't do this, and how about this? And sometimes she did a little bit of research and said, I don't think it's exactly the way you remember, but let's try this. That's okay. But we made a great partnership, and I've recommended her to two of my friends who are writing their own books.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, that means a lot, because I mean, your stories, there are so many. I mean, you could write another book, I'm sure, just some of the things you told us tonight.
I'm ready.
The sequel. Well, I was thinking about your art and reading about, all that you've collected, but really thinking about color, art, and it got me thinking about what you were saying about brand, your packaging. The packaging had to be the same, and it had to be beautiful. Right. So I would think that those packaging of all the products was kind of like creating art. Yeah, I mean,
it really was. Yeah. Look, when I did the packaging, I didn't design it myself. Others did it, but I said that's not right. The color isn't quite the same. And when I did the TV commercials, it's a little bit, something is wrong there. And listen, I was a nerd.
No,
and it takes a nerd to do things like that.
Well, that's the perfectionist in you.
Yeah.
But that's why, that's how you get successful, is to look at all those different things. Let's see what one of their other questions were. We have a lot of questions, so bear with me. I guess, what was it like running a family business? You were running this huge corporation, but really, in a way, it was a family business. How do you think that was compared to all these huge corporations that would have these?
It wasn't a family business; it was a family in business.
In business.
Because the family business has only family. No, this is a family in business. We did different things. Now we have over, I think we have about 70,000 people working for us now.
Amazing.
I only have 5 or 6 family people in there. It is done in a way, they have to earn their stripes. They have to work hard, and if they're in the family and they go to work, they have to be twice as good as others. They have to be. And so what I did, I didn't go into the business. I joined the Navy.
Right.
And I signed up for a total of 6 years, and so the Navy was my PhD in getting along and being good. And my brother Ronald got a job in the U.S. government, and my mother said, "What does he want to do that?" He said to me, I want to just see if I was really good. You have to do that. You have to do something on your own to say, how good are you?
It's like following your heart, just like you said before. It's
Right,
about following your heart and doing what you want,
Right.
which is super important. I think that's how people, especially if we learned anything from the pandemic, is how valuable time is and life is, and doing what you enjoy in life.
Right,
And
you have to do that.
yep, you definitely, and I can tell, I feel that passion. You really enjoy every day, don't you? And you really seem to feel good about every single day. I love that. I love that. And I felt that in the book. I mean, it was, I've heard you speak so many times, and this was your voice. I mean, it really was your voice. Even just the little quips here and there. The writer did a phenomenal job working with you on this job.
Her previous book had been titled "Only the Paranoid Survive." Said, oh boy, that's me. That's me. Paranoid in chief.
That's amazing. Well, it's quite incredible, and it's something for everybody. If you haven't had a chance to pick up the book from Books and Books, we sell it in Bell Harbor Shop, which is incredible. And it was a very quick, easy read because it felt like I was having a conversation with you. It really was, which was wonderful.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you.
And how did you pick all these beautiful pictures of the family? I mean, that must have been tough because I'm sure you have thousands of pictures.
Well, every one of them brought tears to my eyes. Okay. Listen, by the way, I'm a crier. If you need someone to cry at a wedding, call me. Funeral, call me. I cry. And every one of those brought tears to my eyes. And my son William was a crier.
Oh. Well, I'm sure he's sensitive like you. You're passionate, so it's understandable that you feel it. And there were great pictures. I mean, the memories, just thinking about all those times that you had together.
And I remember every picture was taken, I remember when it was taken. Yeah.
And that's something that I really found so interesting, the detail of your memories. I mean, you really, even now when you're talking about it, it's you probably know what you were wearing. I mean, you really have that incredible detail.
Well, I'll tell you something. I remember the color of the wood in my crib. So that's
wow.
But my late wife, Evelyn, remembered what she was wearing every time. She says, oh, I remember what I was wearing. I said, how can you remember what you're wearing? I remember those things. But I'll tell you something, a woman's mind is different from a man's. And remember this, when I was first dating her, before we got engaged or something like that, I was taking her skiing. And so I couldn't get a pair of long johns, long underwear for her because white, it was orange. And she says, I don't want to wear that. I won't wear that. I said, what? Look, it's underwear. No one will see it. No one will know. She said, but I'll know. And I want to tell you something. That was the lesson that I learned about women. No one will know. They'll know.
That's right.
And they'll know. And always. So remember this. If God wanted you to talk, or that he wanted you to listen, he would have given you two mouths. You have to listen. And I listened. And I listened all my life. And just by listening and seeing, I learned more than I could ever imagine.
You learn more, and thanks to tonight in this book, you've taught us a lot too. Thank you, Mr. Lauder, so much. Your listening has brought us years and years of making people beautiful and feeling good about themselves and feeling confident. So thank you so much. And it's been an honor to be able to spend this time with you.
But I think, but I have to tell you one thing.
Tell me.
Wolfsonian is one of my favorite museums in the nation, if not in the world. Every time I go there, I know that I'm home. And when I go upstairs, I feel different. But when I go downstairs where the books are and have a cup of coffee, I'm home. I'm always home there. That's the key thing.
They love it. They welcome you with open arms too. And I know Jackie, who's on the advisory board, wanted to say something. If we can bring her back up, she wanted to just say a goodbye to everybody. Jackie.
There you are. Hi,
To bring me
Jackie.
up. There I am. Well, I want to thank you so much, Leonard, for sharing your stories and your insights, and to you, Stephanie, for your excellent interview. And before I go, I want to acknowledge Books and Books, as well as the Bal Harbour shops for their partnership in tonight's evening and support in presenting the talk. I also want to thank the Wolfsonian for making this evening possible. I hope you enjoyed the show. Good night and be well.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Leonard.
Steph.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you, everybody. And don't forget, go buy the book, guys. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.